In this webinar, we have Jordan Newton, Chief Operating Officer from SonicAire, based out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He's been with SonicAire for 15 years, serving multiple engineer and operational roles. He has a background in fire and explosion incident investigations, fire science, fire equipment certification with UL. He's recently appointed to the fundamental committees on combustible dust and NFPA 660 after quite a bit of effort getting on there. And I'm excited to have him here talking today about SonicAire, about their systems for combustible dust control. We've had him present a number of times throughout the years in the conferences that we've had. And he always brings a really good presentation. So Jordan, without further ado, I'll let you share your slides and you can go into the webinar from there.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. It is exciting, and I'm happy to be back with you again today. As Chris mentioned, we've worked together several times on some different presentations in different formats, and so I'm excited to be back again today. So welcome to everyone. This session is all about you, the plant leaders, the safety professionals, and maintenance teams that are working hard to protect your people and operations in dusty environments. And combustible dust in any facility is no small challenge. The risks are serious and compliance demands are rising. So today we'll walk through how others in your role are shifting from a reactive cleanup methodology to proactive prevention. And with new technologies designed for Class 2 Division 1 zones, you'll leave with new strategies, case studies, and real examples to help you take control of dust before it controls your plant. So what you'll learn today is why dust continues to threaten and safety and uptime, and what Class 2 means and why it matters, the standards you're expected to meet with OSHA and NFPA, what traditional cleaning gets wrong, how industry leaders are using automated dust control to stay ahead, and what real-world results look like, and some best practices you can apply starting today. Okay, so let's look at the real numbers. So this is the 2023 data from our good friends at Dust Safety Science. There were 263 recorded fires and 53 explosions related to dust in 2023, which resulted in 94 injuries and 62 fatalities. So if you work in and around dust, you can see that even though our awareness as a society has increased, there's still a significant opportunity to do things better. So these incidents, they are not distant and one-off cases. They're actually happening every year in facilities like yours. And here you see the breakdown of incidents by industry in 2023. And you can see that food and grain products are leading the way in dust incidents, not in a good way. And over the last 50 years, there's been over 500 grain facility explosions in the US with about 700 injured and 180 fatalities. So this is why Chris does what he does with his organization. This is why we do what we do, is to try to bring that down. So again, looking at kind of the food and grain industry in 2023, 9 explosions, 12 injuries, fortunately no fatalities. So that's positive. And then 2024, also 9 explosions, 2 injuries, no fatalities. So the injuries are coming down. That's a good thing. But the 2-year trend of being flat at 9 explosions per year is not great. So if you work in grain, statistically speaking, if you stay on trend, you might expect to see another 9 explosions this year. I hope that's not the case. Be careful. And I'm glad you're here. And hopefully we can work together to continue to try to take these trends down to 0. All right. Let's take a look at understanding hazardous locations. So all this starts with NFPA 70, which is the National Electrical Code here in the United States. And it states that where fire or explosion hazards might exist due to flammable gases, flammable liquids, produced vapors, combustible liquid produced vapors, combustible dust, combustible fibers and flyings, or ignitable fibers and flyings. That is considered a hazardous location where those things exist. We're going to talk about kind of those first couple of categories there. The first one is called Class 1. That's the flammable gases and vapors and where those may be present. And so we're going to steer away from Class 1 today. We're not going to get into that, but we are going to talk about Class 2 environments. That's where the combustible dust may be present. So if you're here today, you're probably in and around a Class 2 environment. But it even goes further to break that down. So let's look at the different divisions. So Division 1 is a place where combustible dust is in the air under normal operating conditions in quantities sufficient to produce explosive or ignitable mixtures, or where a mechanical failure could lead to a state of ignitable mixtures. So regularly, frequently. Division 2 means combustible dust due to abnormal conditions may be present in the air in quantities sufficient to produce explosive or ignitable mixtures, or where malfunction could cause dust accumulations to become suspended in the air. So Division 2 is unlikely. Division 2 is likely to have those conditions. So chances are some sort of AHJ or authority having jurisdiction, or some inspector, or maybe even an engineer has already determined if these areas exist in your facility. Some facilities take the highest level of safety approach and just use nothing but Class 2 Division 1 equipment in their facility, and that's okay. It's expensive, but it's a very safe approach at their operating procedures. But knowing which zone you're operating in is really the first step. And then the second is making sure your equipment and your strategies are designed to handle it. So you already wear a lot of hats, but when it comes to dust, you're probably also the compliance person. So OSHA starts with the general duty clause. So each employer shall furnish to each of his employees employment and a place of employment which are free from recognized hazards that are causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to employees. And yes, it does consider combustible dust to be a recognized hazard, and it expects you to manage it as well as a recognized hazard. And so OSHA 1910.272 is specific for grain handling facilities, and that requires immediate housekeeping for fugitive dust greater than 1 inch, and it also restricts the use of compressed air for cleanup. It's got some stipulations and some regulations around that. So NFPA 660, which is brand new, as Chris mentioned, I'm now excited to say I'm part of the committee and gonna be working on the future revisions of this standard as it goes forward. That's one of the great things about NFPA is that they don't let their standards get stagnant. They are always under a continuous revision cycle. And so if you have input on that, you can go and actually be a part of that revision process as well as that standard continues to evolve. But NFPA 660 was a combination of many other standards, about 5 or 6 that dealt with combustible dust. And so they are now all in one place and under one umbrella. But 660, it now also talks about the dust hazard analysis. So hopefully you've done one of those. Engineering controls and rigorous housekeeping are really kind of the other headlines that are covered by NFPA 660. And it was actually through dust safety science that I learned kind of how OSHA and NFPA work together. It was always my understanding that OSHA enforced NFPA standards and required everybody to meet those standards. That's not really the case. And Chris was interviewing an OSHA agent, I guess is the right word, but they talked about how they are not an NFPA enforcement agency. What they are looking for, as it states there, is workplaces that are free from recognized hazards. Now, NFPA is a guideline for that, and they may refer to that, or you can say, hey, here's how NFPA says to do it, and this is how we're doing it. And they're probably going to give you a pass on that. So they use it as a guide. They're not there to make sure you make NFPA 660 to the letter of the law. but it is highly advised that you do that. And then it's probably safe to say that if you are following the NFPA regulations, you are going to be in compliance with OSHA from that standpoint and for those categories. Okay, this is what most plants are still relying on: compressed air, blowdowns, and portable vacuum systems. So crews with air wands, vacuums and lifts, trying to stay ahead of the dust. And even when done perfectly, it's a reactive approach. So dust builds up and then you go clean it, you go after it, you go get it. So compressed air can only be used under very specific conditions. You have to very carefully manage your ignition sources and things like that. And dust collectors at process points don't prevent 100% of fugitive dust. Capture what you can, but some dust is probably going to escape and get out into your environment. So you've got a hardworking team, but is this really the best use of their time? And is it keeping you compliant? Those are the questions to ask yourself. So when we look at the real cost of cleaning, so a lot of companies have at least one person on staff that it's their job, or at least the equivalent of one full-time employee, to clean their facility. Just kind of looking at some broad numbers here. If that employee makes $19 an hour, by the time you add benefits onto that, you're almost at $50,000 per year. At 5 years with an annual increase of just kind of cost of living, you're looking at almost, $250,000 in 5 years of investment that you've spent. And that's just the employee cost for having them do housekeeping. So one facility we worked with is a small woodworking and cabinet shop, 40,000 square feet, not too huge. They were paying $1 per square foot for cleaning, for having a third-party crew come in. They're doing 2 cleanings per year plus shutdown at over $200,000 a year. Big money when you looked at doing this every single year. It was costing them a ton. Very quickly, in just a few years, they're at $1 million of investment. And this was several years ago, so these numbers are old. That number is probably even a lot more today. Housekeeping is expensive. So let's face it, many of you are doing everything right and still struggling to keep up. The dust keeps coming, the cleaning never stops, and you're one OSHA visit away from a citation. It's frustrating, it's exhausting for your team, but the good news is you're not stuck with this. Many facilities just like yours are moving toward an automated continuous dust control solution. So instead of scrambling after dust accumulates, they're choosing to prevent dust from ever settling in the first place with systems that work around the clock while production continues. That shift gives teams more time, fewer risks, and peace of mind knowing that they're in control, not constantly reacting. So let me introduce you to SonicAire fans. This is what NFPA 660 refers to as fans for continuous dust control. And that's just what they do. They continuously control the dust. And this isn't about buying equipment, but it's about regaining control, boosting safety, and getting your weekends back. Let's face it. So let me share with you a video that explains just how this technology actually works.
Well, if this is the first time you've ever seen a SonicAire dust control fan, the thought of a fan plus dust may make you wonder, wouldn't a fan just continuously blow the dust around in my facility? Or you may be thinking, aren't these things just blow down fans that I can turn on whenever the dust builds up? Well, maybe you're also concerned about the effects on air quality. Well, in the next few minutes, I'll show you what barrier air means and how it'll make you the hero at your facility when it comes to maintaining a clean environment and cleaner air, all while saving you money. Well, perhaps you've used cooling fans in the past in your facility. Well, those fans definitely have the potential to stir up dust particles and actually create a more dangerous condition for your employees. SonicAire fans actually operate in a completely different way. Some call it science, some call it magic, we call it barrier air. And here's how it works. First, it disrupts the thermal air currents that carry dust to your hard-to-reach overhead spaces. Second, it uses something called agglomeration, and we'll come back to this one in just a minute. But lastly, there's a continuous sweep done by the fans. And since the fans are designed to operate continuously, it's unlikely that any particles will ever reach the ceiling due to points number 1 and 2. However, should any particles reach the ceiling, the fans will clean those particles off on the next pass by. Back to that weird word agglomerate. Okay, so what it means is actually to gather in a collection or a mass or collection of things. So stay with me here. When you look at dust particles under a microscope, they're usually not smooth. They're actually kind of hairy and fibrous. And this shape and structure can cause the particles to actually cling together when they're disturbed by a big blast of air from the fan. It makes them bump into each other and they stick together kind of like tiny little balls of Velcro. And therefore they continuously get bigger and bigger. And eventually they get to such a large size, they can't ride on the thermal currents and the air currents anymore. And they actually get so big and heavy that they fall to the floor, where they can be easily accessed by your plant staff.
All right. So you've made safety a priority, and that's why you're here. But even with vacuums, blowdowns, and dust collectors, there are still blind spots. So dust finds a way to settle in the risers, in the rafters, in the ledges, on the ductwork, on the conduit, on the lights. And that's where this new tool comes in. So in 2024, UL officially, and I like to say finally, certified SonicAire's Class 2 Division 1 rated dust control fans. It was about a 3-year journey and process to go from start to finish on this product. But that means for the very first time, you can use automated airflow systems like the SonicAire fans in the most dangerous zones. So places where combustible dust is always present and always a threat. The fans don't replace your filter systems, but they support your current system. You stay compliant, reduce labor hours, and create safer, cleaner work environments without interrupting production. You're the hero in the story. We're just here to hand you the right tools to make dust one less thing to worry about. So one new innovation that I want to talk about from this year is the new 3 horsepower fan. So when you're responsible for compliance, it can feel like you're always being asked to do more with fewer resources. And that's why we introduced this 3 horsepower fan. So if you've got a dust that's very fine, sticky, or dense, this might be the solution for you. So more power means fewer fans to cover the same area as compared to 1 or 2 horsepower fans. And that means less infrastructure, easier maintenance, and actually lower cost overall. So you don't need a patchwork of smaller fans and smaller fixes. You need a simple, powerful system that adapts to your real world needs. And the 3 horsepower fan may help you do that and protect more space with fewer headaches. So you saw in the video how barrier air keeps overhead surfaces clean by continuously pushing down the dust before it sticks. But we also like to talk about dynamic particle control, and that's how the fans run intelligently to help you maintain compliance. They run smoothly with intelligent airflow that actually adapts to your space, so we can control the up and down movement and oscillation of the fans. But the best part is these systems don't replace your team. They support your team. Your people stay focused on their higher priority tasks, not climbing into lifts and chasing dust. And even in multi-story facilities like this application, a system like this will actually push the dust all the way down till it reaches a solid ground floor where it can easily be swept up and collected then. This is your playbook for staying ahead of risk. So clean overheads, safer workflows, and less stress. So meeting compliance standards is tough when the rules keep evolving and inspections can happen at any time. But the good news is SonicAire fans are built to support the standards you're already trying to meet. UL certification means you're using a proven and accepted method in Class 2, Division 1 or 2 zones. And when OSHA or your insurance agent asks how you're managing combustible dust, you can show them more than just housekeeping logs. You can show them a system that's actually actively running 24/7. You don't need to chase compliance. you can actually lead the way. So the best part of a proactive dust control system is you get to see the results, and so does your inspector. In this facility, they went from thick layers of dust coating everything in sight to a facility that stays clean day after day. And the dust didn't disappear, but it was safely moved to the floor where it can be easily captured, contained, and then removed continuously. This is the visual proof your team, leadership, and insurers want to see. Not just that you cleaned, but that you're in control. Every facility we work with experiences this type of moment where they go, wow, it's really working. Here you see another example. No accumulation and no stress. So here's how a feed mill changed the way they operate for good.
I'm Ron Kirchhoff. I'm Regional Operations Manager for the Midwest for McNess. Oversee Lodi, and then we have other locations in Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Illinois that I oversee. We make livestock and poultry feed, but what that means could be beef, swine, sheep, chicken, duck, all kinds of different feeds. Brings in a lot of different ingredients: corn, soybean meal, salt, calcium, all things that you need in your diet goes in an animal diet. And I've always said that animals eat better than humans because we give them what they need every time and every bite. You'll bring in the raw ingredients, you bring in the corn. When you grind the corn and roll the corn, there's potential for dust. You try to have an enclosed system, but even then, a little bit of dust leaks out, so it'll be in the air. So it's a constant challenge to keep it clean. Then once you weigh it up, it gets mixed up, we end up pelleting it, and then we cool it off. Then we put it in a bin to either be shipped out in bulk form, or we put it in a bin to be bagged off. So anytime you're weighing up product, there's a little bit of dust that emits as you're dropping it into a bag. There's a little bit of dust emits when you're dropping it into a bulk feed truck. It's very important to control your dust. We've all seen explosions over the years or seen it on the news, and those things are just simply devastating. One of your big worries as a manager of a feed mill or a grain facility is you want to make sure you're keeping the people safe. You got to keep your dust levels at a certain level. The last thing you want is to have to tell a family member that your son or your daughter or your husband died in a grain explosion. So it's always on top of mind to do the right thing. Before we got the SonicAire system, we bring in about 4 to 5 people, 5 hours on a weekend, so it's all overtime help. We do that like once a month. We'd bring in a scissors lift, elevate to the top, we'd bring in brushes and air wands and blow off the ledges, and then after you're all done, then people would come in and sweep it all up. So it was a big, dirty job. Even helped a few times myself, and it's not fun, but just something you have to do when you're in a feed mill. These sidewalls in the loadout receiving area, it's 40 feet tall, and it's hard to reach those areas with a broom or an air wand, and then you're putting people at risk by elevating them clear up there and blowing things down. It's a problem area, it's hard to keep clean, so why not put in a system that will automatically do it for you? So I'm glad that First McNess allowed us to try the system. I think it's a very good application. I think it's going to be positive for us to keep that area clean and meeting the OSHA requirements. Everybody has to deal with OSHA. You try to do everything you can, do the right thing for the employees and the team to make sure you have things right so it's a safe environment. But then if something does happen, then OSHA would come in, and then it's all over with. You can't really react to it. It's too late. In our feed mill and other typical feed mills, you have Class 2 Div 1 areas, then you also have Class 2 Div 2 areas. The Class 2 Div 2 areas is where dust can be in the area occasionally. Then Class 2 Div 1, that's where dust can be in the air all the time, or there's a big potential for dust. So if you have an ignition source, then you'd have a chance for an explosion. Here in the loadout receiving area, we consider that a Class 2. So we're able to put the SonicAire fans in. I'm excited to hear that SonicAire now has a Div 1 fan, so we can apply it in the interior parts of the feed mill area too. I think other mills in the country have probably been looking for the same solution. I'm excited about the SonicAire fans. This is going to save us a lot of time and overtime labor. I estimate it's going to save us $10,000 a year just in overtime costs alone. Right now we're trying to do it once a month, but as anything goes, sometimes they get pushed off to 6 weeks. You don't get as clean as you want it to be. So I'm just excited to really be able to keep that area clean on a constant basis going forward. We went with a turnkey system mainly because we wanted to make sure that it got done right. It was installed by professionals, and the other factor was just time. We were all busy managing other things and didn't have time to do another project like this. So once the turnkey was available, it's like, yeah, let's go. And it was a competitive price. I've been very pleased with SonicAire. I think you guys have a good team. You communicate well. After we decided we wanted to go with it, I mean, you guys are out here 2 or 3 times looking at the process. You guys just do a spectacular job and you pay attention to the details. As long as these things work long term like I think they will, I'd have no problem recommending the SonicAire fans. I think it's a good solution for feed mills or grain facilities that have difficult areas to clean, and I think it's a winner.
So Ron didn't just buy fans, he helped his team claim back control of their time, their safety, and their budget. So now let's take a look at one more video. This is BDS Tire Recycling Facility, and take a look at how they took control of their dust and also got some time back as well.
My name is Tobias Cole, plant manager of BDS's tire processing facility. We own and operate the only 2 permitted facilities in all of New England. We all take a lot of pride in the facility itself and its maintenance and making sure that the facility not only functions properly, but is kept up well. One of the challenges with a facility like this is making sure that dust mitigation is constant. Along with the regular dirt and dust that comes in with the tire material itself, the primary generator of dust is the textiles inside the tires. Nylon, polyester, rayon. When those are liberated, they often are basically suspended in the atmosphere. Those are all petroleum products, so they're all very combustible. We've actually had them tested. They burn at over 16,000 BTUs.
There definitely is a lot of dust generated by tire shredding. Here we take everything from a whole tire all the way down to fine material and extract all the wire out. We do the best we can to try to eliminate the dust, but you still do end up with dust on piping and rails that are exposed to the settling of dust. And that's where the SonicAire fans have come into play to blow that off at a high level. Our ceilings are 29 feet tall, so we don't have to have somebody come in once a month and shut the plant down, clean the place out, and try not to let things build up.
There are certain regulations that we have to abide by, that if the dust is allowed to build up beyond a certain point, that we then have to bring in HEPA filters and vacuums and do much more intensive cleaning. The facility was actually designed in mind of making it a less labor-intensive job. It's important not only for employee retention, but also just general morale. Prior to having the SonicAires installed, we basically had to have guys go up in a scissor lift and blow down all the areas with air guns or leaf blowers to keep that dust down.
For us to do a total blowdown would probably take a good 3 or 4 hours, where now the fans run constantly 24 hours a day. It's just rotating and blowing dust off the beams and places we can't get at from top to bottom.
We clean the facility entirely, top to bottom, probably every 2 hours. On days like today, it can easily get to be 120 degrees up on the mezzanines. When you're getting up around 20 or 25 feet above that, they're probably easily in the 150, 140 degree range. So safety becomes an issue at that point. The SonicAires not only help us keep the dust down, but they actually blend the air for us. So it helps in the summertime cool the upper areas, and in the wintertime it helps blend some of the warmer air down on the ground level. With the extra time that we have now that we have the SonicAire fans, we're able to focus more on other areas of facility maintenance and cleanliness as well. We are able to really focus on the ground levels and the mezzanine areas. Maintenance-wise, the fans themselves have been extremely reliable. It's a tough environment in there. It really is. There's a lot of heat, there's a lot of dust, and the fans, for the most part, have performed flawlessly, really.
I have nothing bad to say about the fans. I would recommend them to anybody that's in this kind of environment. They keep on going. The only time we'll shut them off is if we have to do welding or maintenance that's close to where it's going to blow, because they do put off a lot of air. If we keep evolving, we will actually keep adding more fans.
At every recycling facility, dust mitigation is a serious issue. Not only a safety issue, but just a general housekeeping issue. And the fans themselves have been pretty much a solve for us in those hard-to-reach areas and those high-temperature areas. I would definitely recommend SonicAire to other recycling facilities. The one comment we always get is, we can't believe how clean it is. And SonicAire helps us achieve that goal of maintaining a clean facility.
So less time cleaning, more time producing. The team feels safer. Their safety program has gained a new powerful tool to help them maintain compliance. And the story here is simple. When you take control of the dust, you take back your time, you take back your safety, and you take back control. So what happens when you stop chasing dust and start controlling it? Well, there is a financial ROI involved. So you have no overhead cleaning cost, lower labor cost in general, no shutdowns, so increased uptime, increased productivity, and potential insurance savings with having an engineered control solution like the SonicAire fans. There's also a regulatory ROI, so you can avoid citations with continuous compliance, easier inspections and documentation, and backed by the SonicAire compliance guarantee. I'll talk more about that in just a moment. There's a safety return on investment as well. No more risky lifts or overhead cleanings, reduced explosion and inhalation risks, improved air quality for healthier work environments. And then that gives you a competitive ROI. So it demonstrates proactive safety leadership, builds trust with your employees, insurers, auditors, and partners, and it improves your morale and overall culture for your facility. So one of the most important returns you get from automated dust control is confidence. Confidence that you're meeting OSHA and NFPA expectations, confidence that your workers are safe, confidence that no one surprise inspection away from a violation. And here's the big one. You're not doing it alone. Our SonicAire compliance guarantee that I mentioned earlier backs you up. If our fans are installed and maintained properly and you get fined, we'll actually pay the fine or refund you the cost of the fans. It's really that simple. So that's how confident we are in the system and how committed we are to helping you stay compliant, safe, and productive. So with SonicAire, dust is done. So if you're ready to get started and put dust behind you, feel free to scan that QR code there. Check us out on our website at sonicaire.com. And we can actually do a free dust control assessment for you and help you understand and get a baseline. If you've got a DHA already, we're happy to take a look at that and start there. If you haven't, that's also a good place to start, is by consulting with NFPA 660 and getting some ground rules and understanding what a DHA is and how that could benefit you and your organization. So, Chris, that's all the words I brought with me today. That's all I've got. So I don't know if there's any questions that have popped up. I'm happy to answer those if there are.
Yes, we certainly got a couple questions in the queue, and I encourage anyone else that has any other questions to send them in. You can put them in the chat or in the Q&A widget as well. Thank you, George, for bearing with me in the introduction. Melissa says I did all right, but I could not hear anything except for my own voice speaking about half a second after I talked the entire time. So I did try to do the best intro I could, given that I couldn't even really understand what I was saying. But I did figure that out. My iPad was streaming to my computer at the same time as this meeting was. So we got a couple good comments. Fantastic presentation. We got some questions coming in, so that's perfect as well. I've actually seen some people from all over the world here. I see somebody from South Korea, which I think it's like 2 a.m. there. So it's good to see them joining us.
Excellent.
The first question that I had here on the list was for maintenance. So what kind of maintenance activities do you want to install the fans you're running? Are there things you recommend that your customers are doing routinely to try to keep them running efficiently and over the long term?
Sure. It's pretty minimal. There are no lubrication points or anything like that. There are certain hardware checks that we recommend doing to make sure that it is a rotating, oscillating, moving, minor vibration piece of equipment. And so we just want to make sure all the fasteners stay tight and that sort of thing. There are electrical components that we check for wear over time. Either you can do that, we can train you on how to do that, or you can have us do it. If we do it, we will actually keep the fan under warranty. And so your fan kind of always stays under warranty if we take care of that for you.
Perfect. There's a question on limitations for building height. So yeah, are there any limitations on building height? And then for taller buildings, what are some things that you might be considering for those?
Actually, kind of the taller, the better. So there's no maximum height issues there. Maximum height is great. It's just the minimum height. So if you have, a 10 or 15-foot ceiling and you have a lot of forklift traffic and things like that, we have to be mindful of that the fans aren't hanging down too low, where a piece of equipment may come in contact with the fans. If the fans are within reach where someone could actually put their hands on the fan, we have guard kits to keep your hands out of the fan so no one puts their hands in there. That's a bad situation. And then some facilities also have birds that get into their facilities. So we have a bird guard kit to keep any pigeons or things like that out of the fan. That's a problem as well. But yeah, ceiling height, there's no maximum height issues.
Yeah, and I'll mention you showed a picture of it, but I don't think it's the most conventional application for the fans. Usually it's an open space. I've seen cases where you have different layers and levels and you're blowing down from one level to the next to the next. I think you showed I don't know what it was, but a silo or something that had that kind of configuration.
That's a flower tower.
Flower tower. Yeah, that's what I was
yes.
thinking.
Yeah.
There's a question about energy consumption. What kind of energy requirements are there to run the fans?
3 horsepower, and 3 horsepower is the max. Generally, about 80% of our fans are 2 horsepower. That's kind of our sweet spot, and generally the right fan for the right application for most of our industries and most of our customers. That is 2 horsepower, 1500 watts, and it just depends on the voltage. So it's 3-phase voltage, so anything from 208 to 575, and the different voltages have different amperage requirements. So hopefully that answers that.
Good. I think that's one of our questions from South Korea, so that's good. Anything on fire protection? So there's a question here about tying into the fire alarm panel and shutdown. So anything about interlocking and what needs to be considered for response to incidents when they happen?
Yeah, yes, and please. That came about very early on. We've been around for over 20 years now. And one of our earlier customers, and I don't mind mentioning their name because they've talked about us in their presentations as well on safety, but Centos. So you may be familiar with Centos uniform rental. They are all over the country, and now I think even globally. We are in every one of their locations. And so when they first started rolling out and implementing SonicAire fans, their FM global inspector came in and said, fans are great. There's no lamp buildup. There's no dust buildup. This is great, but they've got to be tied in with the sprinkler system. So if you do have a fire alarm activation or something like that, they got to be linked up and tied in together. So at that point, that's when we started developing that into our controls. So that was about 15 years ago now that we started doing that. So yes, our control panels, we call it the command control panel, is set up to integrate with your fire alarm or fire sprinkler system. It just needs a wire connection from that system, and then it shuts the fans off in that event.
Yeah, and I'll actually grab the link here because you mentioned in the presentation interview we did with Jeff Wanko, who is the director of I closed it. Director of some really long name at OSHA. Like it's emergency. I can't remember what it is, but anyway, he was heavily involved with the National Emphasis Program and a lot of things to do with combustible dust through OSHA, and he had talked about NFPA requirements. So they're not set to, how do you say it? Yeah, they're not set to enforce NFPA requirements. What they do is 2 things. They sometimes adopt pieces of it into their own standards. So like the OSHA grain handling standard would have commonalities with NFPA 61. And then the general duty clause, they need something to citate on. So general duty clause is failure to keep workers safe from known hazards. To specify what a known hazard is, that's where you typically see NFPA 69 failed to meet this requirement. There's been a couple cases where they actually failed to do a DHA has been the citation information in behind the citation, but it's usually a general duty clause. If anyone wants to know how to actually look up general duty clause, I can send a link to how to do that as well. It is, yes, the Office of Chemical Process Safety and Enforcement Initiatives. So I'll grab a couple of links and put them in the chat for people for that. I did have another comment I saw in the video. If you see the rubber dust case study that Jordan showed, there's some areas where the fan can't get to, and you can see how much dust is there, and that entire building would look like that. Like there's areas where it goes from black to not black, and most of the areas are not black. If those fans weren't running, the entire area would be completely black. We have a entire production facility here in Nova Scotia it's just all that color. So I've seen a couple of cases where consultants have sent me photos, and yeah, like there's a small cyclone or something, there might be an area on the wall where you see where the fan can't get to, and it's like this, and it's completely caked with material. And the consultant's point was the whole site would be like this if we weren't running the fans.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really is a good demonstration of what they actually do. I had a question about getting started, because I know you and we talk about this every time we do a podcast or a webinar. Because it's the biggest concern that we get from people when they ask us about SonicAire fans is, you call it in the video, it does just blow dust around, but also how do we even get started? What's the process look like for you guys when you bring on a new company in terms of getting, you can't just turn them on.
That's right.
Or you
That's
can,
right.
but
Yeah.
you need to take some special precautions. So what does it look like kind of going from not having anything to installing the fans and running?
Yeah, the good news is NFPA 660 on the section on fans for continuous dust control does actually address this, and I'm glad they do it there. 660 says pre-clean, and I would agree with that. Pre-clean as much as reasonably possible. Sometimes cleaning is hard to do, and it's hard to, this is a cost-saving method so that you don't have to do those manual cleanings anymore. So it's hard for some customers to make that additional investment in the pre-clean. And so, and it doesn't matter how much you pre-clean, the fans are still going to find dust that was missed. So we tell everybody, start the fans up very slowly. So we offer a control panel with a variable speed drive. If you're using that, start them at low speed and then slowly work up to a higher speed. The other alternative is to essentially pulse the fans. So run them for a couple of minutes and turn them off. What we don't want to do, what we always want to avoid is the dust cloud. That's when the dust is so dangerous, is when it becomes airborne and in suspension, and then it becomes that ignitable cloud. And so we want to make sure we do everything absolutely possible to avoid that. So pulsing the fans and not letting it build up to a dust cloud is one way to do that. So a couple minutes on, a few minutes off, let that settle, let the air clear, then turn them on again, run them for 5 minutes, turn them off, let that clear and let that settle. And then of course, while you're doing that, anybody that doesn't need to be in the facility should be out of the facility, wear a respirator, things like that. And then, of course, manage your ignition sources, turn off all lights that aren't necessary to be on, make sure you don't have any air compressors kicking on and things like that. Just be smart about it, but be smart, but do everything absolutely possible to minimize or avoid a dust cloud, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. And we don't want to create a dust cloud in the name of preventing dust clouds.
Yeah, if you're going to do it, you want to do it at a time when you know it's going to happen, so you can have process shut down. It'd be similar to doing blowdown, the requirements that you'd need there, except you only have to do it once and then you don't have to do it anymore.
It is. And so also depending on what kind of product you have in the area, what kind of machines you have in the area, tarp things, cover things, because what's up there will come down. So just plan ahead and be smart about it.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's try to see if we got more questions in the queue here. I was going to ask about, so we got the startup. So the other kind of case I wanted to look at was, you did the Viking Cruises presentation for a while ago.
Yeah, the Viking yachts.
The Viking yachts. So my point was that sometimes it can be a journey, right? Just like the grain site there, where you did one fan in the one area and then kind of added over time. You want to talk a bit about that, just so folks think, hey, if they're worried, you got to buy a whack of fans that have a big bill up front. What does it look like for customers that are kind of starting with a small amount and then building up?
Sure. And that's kind of the beauty of our solution. So you can start small, and we recommend starting your dustiest area, start in the worst case, and let's work out from there. So let's put a lid on the dust where you're generating it, if at all possible, and then migrate out from there. But it can be as small as one fan. It can be as small as a baler room or something like that, where it's pretty contained inside of a one area, and then go out like that. So you don't have to start with a full system or a full facility layout. Of course, we're happy to help with that. But yeah, it can be as simple as one fan. And if you're unsure about the technology, we do offer what we call a try and buy. So you can send us a PO and we'll send you a fan and take 60 days to pay for it. So if you love it after 60 days, great. Send us payment and we'll talk about your other needs. If you don't like it and it's not right for you, and for whatever reason the fan doesn't perform, put it in the box, send it back. We'll cancel the invoice. You don't have to pay us. Don't pay us anything. But we want to guarantee your satisfaction and then make it easy to get started with us.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
make sure
really,
it's the right
yep.
thing for you. Yeah.
That's kind of like letting them take the puppy home.
That's it. That's it.
We had a question here. Does each fan require its own control panel, or can they be integrated so that one panel controls multiple fans?
One panel can control multiple fans, and it depends on the voltage and the amperage. So generally speaking, one panel will control for 2 horsepower, 460 volt. I think we can do like 16 fans. So definitely group them. And what you'll find is once you've got, a dozen fans or so, you probably have moved into a whole nother zone of your facility. So once you've exceeded about 12 fans, you probably need to look at adding a new control panel for that other zone as well.
Yeah, and Josh put a link there in the contact us form for SonicAire as well. So
Okay,
if
perfect.
there's no other questions in the queue, I think we'll let people go for today. I want to say thank you again for bearing with me through some very minor technical issues for you guys at the start. And I want to say thank you again for Jordan for coming on. We will put the replay for this into the Dust Saved Academy and the slides and some information for Jordan if you want to contact him. And as always, I want to say thank you, Jordan, for coming on here today. And I hope everyone has an awesome and safe day out there.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. See you, Jordan. See everyone in the queue. Have a good evening, morning, wherever you are in the world over there.